The Nightly Visitor. Chapter 1. The Strange Dreams. I've always been a light sleeper, even as a child. My parents would often joke that I have the ability to fall asleep anywhere, anytime, and wake up instantly at the slightest sound. But tonight was different. Tonight, something kept me awake until well past midnight. As I lay in bed staring at the dark ceiling of my apartment, I couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling of being watched. It wasn't just paranoia. It felt as though an unseen presence lingered just out of sight, observing me with cold curiosity. Each time I opened my eyes to scan the dimly lit room, there was nothing but shadows cast by the streetlights, filtering through the thin curtains. But then came a sudden flash of pale light emanating from somewhere in the corner. I bolted upright as I squinted toward the soft glow. In the center of it sat an unmistakable figure, tall and gaunt, shrouded in misty shadows that seemed to dance around its form like wispy smoke. My heart pounded wildly against my rib cage while I strained for a clearer view, but the light only cast eerie silhouettes on my walls. With every breath, the figure shifted and twisted, morphing into impossible angles before disappearing altogether. Heart still racing, I threw off the covers to investigate further. But when I reached the spot where it had been sitting, there was nothing. No trace of a footprint, not even a displaced book or crease in the carpet. Shaking my head, I convinced myself it must have been a vivid dream born from too many late night lectures and early morning classes. The next day passed like any other. Classes, coffee with friends, assignments due at the last minute. But as dusk approached, something felt off. Stepping into my apartment, I noticed an unusual air clinging to me. Something metallic and stale. The door had been left open a crack, which was odd. Swirling dust motes danced in the fading light. My gaze landed on the bookshelf that had always held my favorite novels and textbooks, each one neatly aligned. Amidst the familiar titles stood a tome bound in leather, its cover adorned with strange symbols I'd never seen before. The title, De Vermis Mysteriis, was etched in crimson letters, yet it hadn't been there just hours ago. The book felt heavy as I pulled it out, thick and ancient, filled with yellowed pages that released a musty scent upon opening. As I began flipping through the pages, words dissolved into misting ink before my eyes. The text changed on its own to reveal strange, occult rituals. Unnerved, I set it aside until morning, attributing the discovery to exhaustion. Little did I know those events were only the beginning of my nocturnal visitors' interactions with me. Chapter 2. The Unwanted Gift. Days blurred together as classes consumed my schedule. At night, though, restlessness grew thicker than the summer humidity. Each evening, a single feather would appear at my doorstep. I'd toss it out without thought until one fateful night when a package arrived. Not wrapped or stamped, no return address. Just a white feather on a bare sheet of paper with no note. That was strange enough, but then came the footsteps outside my door. At first, they seemed to belong to someone slowly walking by. Yet each time I listened closely, there would be nothing. In the silence that followed, I sensed something lingering, watching. My room had grown hotter despite the cranked thermostat. As I reached for a sweatshirt draped over a chair, it slipped from my grasp and settled around me, as if an unseen force guided it back onto its hanger. Night after night, this pattern continued. Footsteps, warmth, and then nothing but stillness. One evening while studying under a lamp, The sounds intensified to heavy footfalls outside my door, then stopped. I glanced at the clock, 1:15 a.m. The silence made me hold my breath, as if an invisible presence waited for something. My skin crawled, sweat beading across my forehead despite the air conditioning. Shadows from the flickering light cast sinister silhouettes that twisted and shifted. My mind fought reality. It was just a tree outside, its branches swaying in a gust. Surely. The unmistakable whisper of pages flipping drifted through the thin walls, as if someone read beside me. I looked over my shoulder to an empty room, then returned to my notes, determined to focus. But when I glanced again, they were turned upside down. A chill slithered up my spine. My eyes followed the fluttering edges. It was reading De Vermis Mysteriis, the same book from that mysterious tome. The pages seemed to turn faster as I approached, whispering ancient words in a voiceless murmur before falling silent once more. As night deepened into dawn, sleep eluded me, replaced by an eerie quiet where every breath sounded like thunder in my ears. A chill ran through me when I caught another glimpse of the book, now resting on my desk with its cover ajar, as if someone had recently touched it. Each morning brought a new section read and turned, some pages torn from their binding. The text wasn't my language, but eerie knowledge seeped into dreams. Of an old man chanting under moonlight, people vanishing in the woods nearby, blood rituals performed on a full moon. It was then that I noticed the feather on my pillow. Another package had arrived without a sender's name or message. Chapter 3. The Final Goodbye. My resolve to investigate faltered under fear, but finally, I ventured out into the cold morning air to follow the scent of smoke carrying through my building's vents and downstairs. Behind the dumpster stood a man in tattered robes, chanting under the pale moonlight of dawn. I approached him as he looked up with sunken eyes, an otherworldly gaze meeting mine before vanishing into the night. Shaken, I stumbled back upstairs. In a burst of adrenaline, I opened the tome once more. On pages stained crimson and black were his words from memory. The hunter must plead with the entity to depart for all time. Flickering flames engulfed my room as I read aloud in desperation. Shadows danced, swirling into an impenetrable darkness that engulfed me, enveloping everything but left a gaping void where it had once stood. In the morning light, my apartment was empty and silent. I sought answers, scouring online forums for occult knowledge. The responses were eerie. Whispers of the nightly visitor, an ancient entity known to appear in human form when summoned by curious minds who dabbled too deeply. I realized what I'd done, pleaded with an unseen force without knowing the cost. As day turned into night, a knock sounded at my door. It was quiet and persistent. My pulse quickened as I approached cautiously, reaching for a baseball bat beneath the couch cushion. The knock intensified before stopping. I breathed deeply and opened it, ready to face whatever shadow had haunted me. There on the floor, sitting in an old chair carved with arcane symbols, sat him, the man from the night behind my building. He gestured with bony fingers for me to come closer. I am bound to your realm by desire. His voice sounded like dry leaves rustling. I took a deep breath and approached. Leave me be, I demanded as loudly as fear allowed. He leaned forward in silence, then whispered back. The pages you read called forth my kind. The air thinned with an unnatural presence. He vanished, leaving behind the tome. Pages lay scattered around us. In the center of one lay a note, a boon at a cost. Remember our bond. Daring to glimpse it, I saw his face in faded ink on parchment. My own eyes stared back from hollow sockets. His words were no longer whined, but echoed inside my mind now. I've shown favor for your curiosity, mortal. The hunter shall roam until one day you're called upon again. And with that, he was gone. I closed the book, hoping it ended this ordeal. In its pages, a face stared back, and so did every night's visitor in dreams. Each day brought more.